For decades, dietary guidance often warned about egg yolks and cholesterol. But physiology is more nuanced. What most people still don't understand is this. It's not about the egg. It's about what your liver does with it. And that process is far more sophisticated than anyone gave it credit for. If you've been eating 5 eggs a day, or you're curious whether you should, this is a clearer framework for what physiology suggests. I'll walk you through what happens inside your liver from the moment those eggs hit your digestive system, how this organ recalibrates its chemical output to handle the load, and why the cholesterol story you learned in the 90s doesn't match what the research shows today. Then I'll give you one practical rule at the end that makes daily egg consumption smarter and more predictable. This is based on physiology and what clinical research commonly suggests, not hype or fear. Let's start with why this matters in the first place. Your liver is not a passive filter. It's a full-scale biochemical factory running thousands of reactions every second. When you shift your diet, especially by adding 5 whole eggs every single day, you're delivering a concentrated package of protein, fat, cholesterol, choline, and fat-soluble vitamins straight into that factory. The liver has to adjust its assembly lines. It recalibrates bile production, modulates how much cholesterol it makes internally. It shifts how it stores and mobilizes energy. And depending on your genetics, activity level, and the rest of your diet, those adjustments can either optimize your metabolism or quietly stress the system. Most people never see this part. They just assume eggs are either good or bad. But your body doesn't work in absolutes. It works in feedback loops. Within the first 2 hours after eating those 5 eggs, your stomach and small intestine start breaking them down. The yolks contain roughly 200 to 250 milligrams of dietary cholesterol each. That's around 1 to 1.3 grams of cholesterol entering your system in one sitting. Your liver receives a signal through the portal vein that a large lipid and protein load is on the way. In response, the gallbladder contracts and releases bile, a greenish fluid your liver synthesized earlier and stored for exactly this moment. Bile is made of bile acids, cholesterol, and phospholipids. Its job is to emulsify fat so your intestines can absorb it. When you eat more fat, your liver ramps up bile acid production to match. If you've been low-fat for years and suddenly start eating 5 eggs daily, your bile output might lag at first. That's when some people notice greasy stools or mild digestive discomfort. This often improves over days to weeks as the liver adapts. A few hours later, the amino acids from the egg whites and the fatty acids from the yolks are circulating in your bloodstream. Your liver pulls them in and starts deciding what to do with them. Protein gets routed toward tissue repair, enzyme production, and the creation of transport molecules. Fat gets processed into triglycerides, or used to build cell membranes. What's worth noting is that the cholesterol you just ate doesn't automatically become the cholesterol in your blood. Your liver monitors how much cholesterol is coming in from food. When it detects a spike, it downregulates its own internal production. This is called feedback inhibition. The enzyme responsible for making cholesterol inside your liver is called HMG-CoA reductase. Dietary cholesterol suppresses that enzyme. So in many people, the liver can down-regulate internal production. Though responses vary, the total amount in your blood stays relatively stable. That's why some earlier observational findings didn't fully capture individual variability in dietary context. They didn't account for what the liver was doing behind the scenes. 6 to 8 hours in, your liver is now managing the energy balance. If you're physically active or in a calorie deficit, those egg-derived fats get oxidized for fuel. Your liver packages some of the triglycerides into VLDL particles, which are lipoproteins that transport fat to muscles and tissues that need it. If you're sedentary and eating a high-carb diet on top of those 5 eggs, the liver has a different problem. It's getting more energy than it can immediately use. In that case, it starts storing fat as hepatic triglycerides. Over time, in a surplus calorie and high refined carb context, this may contribute to fat accumulation in the liver. But it's not the eggs alone. It's the combination of excess calories, low activity, and high refined carbohydrate intake. The outcome depends on your total calorie balance, carb load, and activity. Half a day later, assuming you've eaten other meals throughout the day, your liver is cycling between fed and fasted states. During the fed state, it stores nutrients. During the fasted state, it releases them. If your overall diet is nutrient-dense and you're not overloading on sugar, those 5 eggs may actually support your liver's ability to stabilize blood glucose. The high protein content improves satiety and reduces insulin spikes. The fat slows gastric emptying, which means glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually. Some people report feeling more steady energy when they eat eggs daily. Others feel sluggish or notice digestive heaviness. That difference often comes down to individual bile efficiency, gut health, and how well your liver was functioning before you started. Now let's zoom into what's happening at the organ level. First, the liver itself. Its primary adjustment when you eat 5 eggs daily is in bile acid synthesis and cholesterol homeostasis. Bile acids are made from cholesterol. When you eat more dietary cholesterol, your liver can either increase bile production or reduce its internal cholesterol manufacturing. In healthy individuals, it does both. It makes more bile to digest the fat, and it cuts back on cholesterol synthesis to avoid excess. This is why several clinical trials suggest eggs can raise HDL, while LDL responses vary across individuals. There are exceptions. A subset of people, often called hyperresponders, do see LDL rise when they eat more cholesterol. For them, genetic factors affect how their liver regulates cholesterol. If you're in that group, eating 5 eggs daily might not be the best move without medical guidance. But for most people, the liver handles it just fine. Now let's look at the gallbladder and bile ducts. These aren't separate from the liver. They're part of the same digestive coordination system. When fat enters the small intestine, the hormone cholecystokinin gets released. That signals the gallbladder to contract and push bile into the duodenum. If you've been eating a very low-fat diet for years, your gallbladder doesn't get much practice. Bile can become thick or sluggish. When you suddenly add 5 eggs a day, you're asking that system to wake up. Some people develop temporary digestive upset. Others notice improved gallbladder function over time, because regular fat intake keeps bile flowing. The trade-off here is real. If you have a history of gallstones or sluggish bile, ramping up fat intake too quickly can trigger discomfort. The safer approach is to increase egg consumption gradually over 2 to 3 weeks. Another key player is the pancreas. It secretes digestive enzymes to break down protein and fat. It also releases insulin in response to the small carbohydrate content in eggs, which is minimal. Because eggs are low in sugar and high in protein, they tend to produce a very mild insulin response. For people managing insulin resistance or prediabetes, this can be a benefit. The liver gets a break from constant glucose and insulin spikes, which means it has more capacity to process fat efficiently. But if you're eating those 5 eggs with toast, juice, and hash browns, you're adding a carbohydrate surge on top of the fat. Now the liver has to manage both. That combination can lead to increased triglyceride synthesis and fat storage, especially if it happens meal after meal. The meal composition matters significantly. Then there are the intestines and gut microbiome. Eggs contain choline, a nutrient most people don't get enough of. Choline supports liver health by helping the organ package and export fat in the form of VLDL. Without enough choline, fat can accumulate in the liver even if you're not overeating. However, when gut bacteria metabolize choline, they can produce a compound called trimethylamine, which the liver converts to TMAO. Some research has linked elevated TMAO to cardiovascular markers, though the clinical significance is still being studied. Associations don't prove causation, and the clinical relevance is still debated. If your gut microbiome is balanced, this is usually not a concern. If it's disrupted, eating large amounts of choline daily might increase TMAO. The trade-off is that choline is essential for liver detoxification and brain function, so cutting it out completely isn't the answer. The smarter move is to support gut health with fiber, fermented foods, and adequate hydration. What often gets overlooked is this: the liver doesn't operate in isolation. What happens when you eat 5 eggs a day depends heavily on sleep quality, physical activity, stress levels, and the rest of your diet. If you're sleeping poorly, your liver's ability to regulate glucose and process fat gets impaired. If you're sitting all day, those calories are more likely to be stored than burned. If you're chronically stressed, cortisol can interfere with insulin sensitivity and fat metabolism. The eggs aren't the problem. The metabolic context is. This is why 2 people can eat the exact same number of eggs and have completely different outcomes. One person feels energized, lean, and clear-headed. The other feels bloated, lethargic, and notices their LDL creeping up. Neither is wrong. They're just working with different metabolic baselines. Let me give you a practical example of a trade-off that doesn't get talked about enough. Eggs are one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. They provide vitamin A, D, E, K, B vitamins, selenium, and high-quality protein. If you're replacing processed breakfast cereals or pastries with 5 eggs, your liver is likely getting a massive upgrade in raw materials for detoxification and repair. But if you're adding 5 eggs on top of an already calorie-dense diet, without adjusting anything else, you're simply increasing your total intake. The liver can only do so much with excess. It will store what it can't use. Over time, that can lead to weight gain and metabolic stress. The difference between benefit and burden often comes down to subtraction as much as addition. Another detail that often gets ignored is the quality of the eggs themselves. Eggs from pasture-raised hens tend to have a better omega-3 to omega-6 ratio and higher levels of fat-soluble vitamins. Conventional eggs are still nutritious, but the fatty acid profile can be less favorable depending on what the hens were fed. Your liver processes all fats, but it responds differently to omega-3s than it does to excess omega-6s. Omega-3s support anti-inflammatory pathways. Omega-6 in excess can promote inflammation. If you're eating 5 eggs a day, the source starts to matter more because the cumulative effect over weeks and months adds up. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being aware. If you only remember one thing from this entire video, let it be this: your liver is not a static organ that just filters toxins. It's a dynamic metabolic hub that adapts to what you feed it. When you eat 5 eggs a day, you're not delivering a poison or a miracle cure. You're delivering a concentrated nutrient load that your liver will process according to your genetics, activity level, and overall lifestyle. Eggs can be a helpful tool, but outcomes vary by context. What matters is whether your liver has the capacity and the context to handle them well. So here's the body reset rule. If you want to eat eggs daily without overwhelming your system, pair them with fiber-rich vegetables and keep your refined carbohydrate intake low in the same meal. This allows your liver to focus on processing fat and protein without also managing a glucose spike. Start with 2 to 3 eggs per day for the first week and observe how your digestion responds. If you feel good, you can gradually increase to 5. The key is giving your bile production time to ramp up. If you're sedentary, consider adding 20 to 30 minutes of walking after your egg-heavy meal. Movement helps your muscles pull triglycerides out of circulation, which reduces the burden on your liver to store them. And if you have a family history of high cholesterol or cardiovascular disease, consider checking a lipid panel after a few weeks to see your response. Some people stay stable, some improve, others change. If you're a hyper-responder, you'll want to know early so you can adjust. Here are 2 practical alternatives if 5 eggs feels like too much, or if you want similar benefits with a lighter approach. Option 1. Eat 3 whole eggs and add extra egg whites. You still get the protein and some of the fat-soluble vitamins, but you reduce the total cholesterol and fat load. This can be helpful if your digestion is sensitive or if your liver is already managing other metabolic challenges. Option 2. Cycle your intake. Eat 5 eggs on training days or days when you're more active, and drop to 2 or 3 on rest days. This gives your liver periodic breaks while still allowing you to benefit from the nutrient density. Both approaches respect your liver's capacity without eliminating a valuable food source. One more thing. If you're managing a condition like fatty liver, insulin resistance, or elevated triglycerides, these shifts in diet can interact with your current metabolic state in ways that vary person to person. In those cases, it's worth discussing changes like this with someone who understands your full health picture. This is about personalization. Your liver is one of the most resilient organs in your body. It can regenerate. It can adapt. But it works best when you give it consistent, thoughtful inputs rather than extreme swings. Eggs can be part of that strategy, but only if the rest of your habits support the process. If this helped you see the biology more clearly, drop the word bile in the comments so I know this breakdown landed. And if you want more videos that map out what actually happens inside your body when you change a habit, hit subscribe. Next time, we're looking at what happens to your kidneys when you drink a gallon of water a day, and the timeline might surprise you. Thanks for watching.